I guess just kind of starting with like what made you want to become an entrepreneur, and like you said, this is your 6-year anniversary coming up. Like, what was happening 6 years ago that made you decide to change your career and everything? I know it's a big question, but
Yeah. So I'll first start that it was when I was in college that I kind of started. Well, I'll kind of have a couple reference points. So definitely was in college that I was like, wow, I'd love to be an entrepreneur someday. And I just always just thought that in the back of my mind. And to be honest, I don't think I ever even like said that out loud. But the things that drew me to that is, one, I was very entrepreneurial on my college campus at Fairleigh Dickinson University. So like I was one of the founding members of our marketing club. And so, I literally got to see that like get built up from the ground up, from like laying out the framework to that, to recruiting students, to being on the e-board, to then becoming president, all this stuff. Like I actually got to see something from scratch. And so I really got into that. And then I later started a Habitat for Humanity campus chapter, again, started from scratch. But what I was told was like, that all was just a line item on your resume. Like it wasn't a big deal. Right. But when I really sat down and fleshed it out, like it was a full job description. Like I raised $6,000 in 8 weeks. We recruited and onboarded and trained, like 19 students that went on this first Habitat for Humanity, like all the things that like a leader / a business owner would be doing. It's just, I wasn't opening like a brick and mortar, shop. It was a club. And so like what I said to you the other day is like, use this as your digital creative playground. Like that was my entrepreneurship playground. I just didn't know it. And then the second thing is I think it was my fall semester senior year, I took an amazing entrepreneurship class. So it wasn't even entrepreneurship. It was like senior business forum. And it just so happened that like entrepreneurship was the theme, and that the professor was an adjunct and he was an entrepreneur. And so like, it was just very heavily entrepreneurship focused, but man, he drilled us like everything from when we had to do our pitch to like being like you have 4 minutes to do your pitch. And if it was 4:01, you were cut off. And then teaching us like forecasting models and revenue models, and like even critiquing that. And again, in the moment I was like, this is really cool, but like I never saw myself doing it. And why I never saw myself doing it is, one, like no one in my family really is or was an entrepreneur. My dad was a graphic designer for pretty much his whole career, and he had like a side website business, like when in 1999 in AOL times, like he created like some side hustle there, creating websites. And then I think my uncle Rick had done some like sports memorabilia or sports kind of like jackets. Like he did, there were side hustles in the family, but not true like taking the deep end and like leaving their corporate job or paycheck behind. So one, I just never had the influence, mentorship, or like it never was in front of my face. And then I think the second thing is going and leaving college and getting into the real world. One of my good friends, Russ, his father, who I definitely like a male figure in my life that I've looked up to outside of my family. He was an entrepreneur. He owned his own like insurance business at one point. And I remember Russ always saying like, when I was a kid, he was never around. It was a traditional, like working 100-hour a week, like trying to keep revenue coming in. And that scared me. Right. So those are my reference points. And that's why I don't think I didn't pursue it out of the gate. Plus this was like 2006, 7, 8. So like it just, and I was 23, 24, 25, like what was I going to start? So I'll stop there, and then you can follow up with questions, but that's my like journey / perception of entrepreneurship.
Okay. Yeah, that's great. That makes sense. So then when did you kind of like think like maybe this is for me, and kind of like transform from, oh, like this like would be cool, but like not really thinking it was for you, and then kind of being like, oh wait, like I have an idea, or like I want to actually pursue it?
Yeah. So I graduated May of 2006. I worked for one university for 2 years, and then in May of 2008, I got a job at Rutgers University. And about a year or two later, I started, so I know one of our topics in this post is like being entrepreneurial. And man, there's a huge difference. And so like, I hate when I see job descriptions or companies that say, we want somebody that's entrepreneurial. And like, there's a fine line. I'd rather say entrepreneurial. So 2 years into my job at Rutgers, I started to have that feeling I had when I was at FDU of like, I could be entrepreneurial here. Like I can start something that doesn't exist. There's a new skill set, or there's a new, like, basically like our marketing was not where it should have been, come Facebook, YouTube, Instagram, early days. Like we just weren't innovative there. So I saw a need. I had a skill set, and I knew how to, the cliche word of like bootstrap stuff together. I knew how to do stuff and create content and do everything on like basically a $0 budget. So that wound up in like 2012 and 13, wound up me getting promoted and starting a brand new department on its own. So basically, I was promoted as assistant director of marketing and social media. So talk about like a digital creative playground. Like I was given that job, given very little money of a budget, had to recruit and hire students from scratch. Like I had my own little business in there, which was really cool. I had to manage, when I left there, it was like a 6-figure budget, unlimited tech AV video equipment. We had a team of like 10 students, a couple full-time graphic designers and grad assistants. So like I was running a company per se of like 10 people with a $100K plus budget. So let me just give me 1 minute to plug my laptop in here.
Yeah, of course.
So that's when I was like, wow, that really lit me up, and that was really cool. And it was practical. Like I still had the air cover. Like I still was getting a paycheck every 2 weeks. I was working for a state funded organization. I was part of a 35 plus person professional staff. So like it was a big deal, but I started something from scratch. And then working with these student leaders, that's when I kept like saying like, man, I need to do something for them. I need to start something on my own. And that's the niche movement was born before FYN Creative was. So I started doing the side hustle thing, which is a big term now, is people creating their own side hustles. But that wasn't like making me any money. Like I was speaking for free. I was running some little workshops. I mean, I think I might've made like a couple $100 here and there, but I really wasn't producing a per se income, even though I was trying to set that up. Like what could my revenue stream be? But I never wanted to charge or nickel and dime college students to like get this free career advice, really. And I think that's one of the things I mentioned to you on our interview. So I knew I had something there, a grassroots movement, but I didn't know how to like make a living off of it or turn it into a full-time gig. Mm-hmm. So I'll stop there. But yeah, so 2012, 13, 14-ish, those 3 years is when the entrepreneurship kind of came back into me, and I started then like doing stuff on the side and spending my nights and weekends starting the niche movement, and that's really what got the wheels getting closer to me taking the leap of faith.
Mm-hmm. Very nice.
Mm-hmm.
And then so a lot you mentioned like a digital playground, and I just haven't heard that term a lot in the industry. Is that something you kind of came up with when like starting FYN or the niche movement, or is that like a common industry term? Like
I'm not going to say it's, that I can recall have heard it anywhere. And I'm not going to say it's an industry term. I'm sure other people may use it, but like, I just have always viewed, any student that's had a chance to work with me in any capacity. And even some of the like Jaylene and some other of my freelance project and part-time based, people that work and have worked with me, like they're 24, 25, 26 years old. Like it's their creative playground. Like that, the stakes are a little bit higher because we're doing client service work and we have to deliver and it has to be really sharp. But it's their way. Like I know they're not going to be able to work. Some people may not work with me for the next 50 years. Because it's just not the way I set up my business model, which we'll probably talk about, like what type of entrepreneurship I fall under. But so yeah, and then again, I viewed my college experience as like this playground where I could safely like play around with like the university's budget. Like or not even a budget. We didn't, like for Habitat and the marketing club, like we didn't have a budget. We had to fundraise. We had to get sponsorship. So yeah.
Okay. Yeah, that makes sense. I'm just curious. And so then you were talking about starting the niche movement while also being at Rutgers. When did you kind of take that step to like go full time to the niche movement and also start FYN?
Yeah. So I shared this in another clip in one of my like workshops recently, and I was all talking about career transitions. And so I started the niche in like fall of 2012, and I remember like 3 to 6 months later, I was sitting down with my brother-in-law and his girlfriend at the time and my wife. We were having like sushi dinner. I'll never forget it. And I was like, Brian, I'm gonna take this thing full time, and then in like count my words, like in the next 3 to 6 months, I'm going full time with this. And my brother-in-law is a lot older than me by like a good 20, 30 years. And he's an accountant, but he basically kind of like reeled me in. And at first I was discouraged, but like now looking back, I'm like, this kind of makes sense. So one, I had to kind of like prove, is there any more revenue out there with the niche? Is there anything I can do? So whether it's getting out there to get paid to speak, run workshops, one of the things was like self-publishing this book. I crowdfunded $3,500 in 4 weeks. And so again, that gave me some runway. I then, between me personally and then my wife and I, we kind of got creative and had a little bit of a financial runway. So like it took 2 full years from like 2012 to October of 2014, it was in the making, but I wouldn't say it was strategic. It just so happened that I hit a crossroads with my job at Rutgers where like I just didn't feel respected anymore. My wife had another career opportunity and we were trying to move. And so life happened. There was a lot of different things happening. And one day I came home. My true anniversary date is September like 18th. That's when I came home and was like, Courtney, I got to quit. Like I got to do something. I got to get out of this box that I've been put in. Because it was 2 years I built this marketing department up. I just wasn't feeling that fire anymore. And so she's like, all right, let's figure it out. And on September like 18th or 19th, I walked into my boss's office and gave the 2 weeks notice. And that's when it was real. It's like, all right, Kev, come end of October, you're out of a paycheck from Rutgers, benefits, all that stuff. So I was writing the book. I had some funding from that. I had some money saved up. But with that, I did have 1 or 2 freelance video projects lined up because of just the work I was doing at Rutgers. I had taught myself video, photo. So I was basically hustling to get any freelance photo, video, editing, social media consultant job possible. But when I left Rutgers, it was always that I'm going to do 2 things, the niche movement and Kevin O'Connell is going to be a digital storyteller. So before FY and Creative was even born, it was just Kevin O'Connell, a freelancer. So I can do your social media for you. I can do consulting. I can do video editing. I can do video production. I can do photo. But it was always as a digital storyteller 6 years ago, which I think that was an early term to be used because I didn't want to be a social media consultant. I didn't want to just be a videographer. It was digital storytelling. So yeah, basically like 2 weeks after I left my job, I was in and out of New York City trying to hustle, try to meet people. I was using my the WeWork network, even though I wasn't a WeWork member, and I landed one of my first retainer clients where like I had them for 3 months and I got paid over 3 months. And it was like, I mean, you're talking, I was getting paid like $500. It wasn't a ton compared to what I was leaving behind, but like I had 3 months of payment coming in, which was huge. And then things kind of just took off. We moved to DC and I met people down here in DC. I got another 2 clients, GW being one of them. And within 6 months, I was like, oh my God, like I have some finances. I'm like, I can now get a WeWork office. I can now hire our first 2 interns. Like it was happening, but I didn't have like a traditional business plan. I had some trajectory in my head. I obviously kept my finances on an Excel sheet of like what I needed to spend, save, and all that stuff. But like, it wasn't a traditional, like the course I took at FDU, I had to come up with a traditional business plan. I didn't have that. It was a bit of a pray, some duct tape, and just some hustle and serendipity. So
do you think it's more common for people to have an experience like you where they're kind of like stuck in a box and they do have an idea for something else and to slowly move into that idea and kind of just like not wing it, but do it as you go and see what works out and what doesn't? Or do you think, or would you recommend like having a stronger, more traditional business plan and doing it step by step, or does it depend on the person or entrepreneur?
Yeah. So I'll say this, and especially up until this recession or until this bubble, like the main type of entrepreneur or the traditional like Silicon Valley, New York City, like startups that I've even come across in my WeWork network, it ranged, but those type of entrepreneurs were not even tech based, but they were getting funding. So whether they were getting a $10,000 check from their family, a $100,000 angel investment, millions of dollars in Series A, B, and C funding, like they were getting cash infusion, which they might need, right? Because they're building an app, a website, the next Uber, etc. I was building a service business, and so the type of entrepreneur I am, and the thing that I pride myself on is like, aside from that $3,500 crowdfunding that I did to write this book, which a good half of that money was used towards like the book and doing interviews and paying for different editing services. Like I didn't just take that money and spend it. So I didn't get these cash infusions or investments. But as far as like what type of qualities people should look for is, I do think that if I tried to do this right out of the gate of college, I don't think I would have had the experience. I think I would have the drive, the hustle, and the risk or the scaredness of it. I would have tried to push through. But the biggest thing I would say is I didn't have the network then. I had almost 10 years underneath my belt, and I had a resume and the work to back it up, and the network to back it up. So when it was time to leave, I had all these people supporting me. They knew about it. They wanted to help make connections, find opportunities, find a way to bring me in, like do all this different stuff. And I feel like if I did that earlier, I wouldn't have. So my, I guess, recommendation would be like, I always say this regardless, like build your network before you need it. And if you think you're going to go out on your own and you think you can do it in 3 to 6 months, I would double or triple that timeline, and just save a crap ton of money. I would even say like I wish I would have doubled, if not tripled, the amount of money I saved just in case. So, but.
Okay, great. Thanks. And then kind of also going back a little more to having your brother talk you down a bit and just kind of like rethinking everything. Did you face more, I don't want to say criticism, but like not people supporting you as much? Was that like a challenge you faced, or not that much other challenges that you did face that you weren't maybe expecting?
Yeah. No, listen, I'm super lucky that, like, again, I told you that little story of like, I went home and to my wife and put my hands on our kitchen counter, and she's like, all right, Kev, like, let's do this. Let's figure this out physically, emotionally, mentally, financially, like, let's do it. So she was supportive, and she always has been and still is to this day. I remember, I didn't tell my parents. Like, my parents knew, like, I was doing this side hustle and I wanted to go work for myself someday. But I remember I saw them in June or July of that summer of 2014. And the next time I saw them in October, I had already quit. I already, like, we were away for a long weekend in New York State with them. And I remember that Monday I woke up and I think I was like, I'm unemployed. Like, I didn't say unemployed. I was like, I'm an entrepreneur now. Like, I'm no longer making money. And they're like, wait, you left Rutgers? I'm like, yeah, I left Rutgers 2 weeks ago. But like, they were super supportive, but like, I just didn't tell them, just even cause like my mom gets a little like she definitely not as risk averse, but, and then, yeah, like my father-in-law as well, like he owned his own CPA accounting firm. So he was an entrepreneur. And I remember the year leading up to all that, like, I think I would always say like, oh, here's my revenue stream for this and that. And he'd always kind of grill me down and be like, you sure? Like, are you overestimating, or can you turn 60 of those accounts or servers? Like, could you do this? And that kind of made me be like, ooh, this is tough. Like, so I never got like, I never got like non-support. I think what I got was, just give me 1 second. I'm down in my basement office and I don't know if they're playing or if my son's crying hysterically right now. I think he's okay. So it's some, I get worried because either he's falling because he's crawling and walking, or it's teething. If it's teething, it's okay. I never got non-support. Here's what would say, and I've said this again in some of the things that I've recorded or whatever, but I have a list on my phone and it's kind of cryptic. But the thing that would fuel me and that where I didn't get support is, and fair enough, there would be clients that would either ask me for a proposal, actually definitely for the clients that would like reach out to me and want to work with me, and then they ghosted me. Like I have a list on my phone of like, I forget what I have it called, but like, those are the people that, in my opinion, didn't support me or didn't see my value or didn't see my worth or didn't see what I could do for them, or they just weren't serious about hiring per se service. And those were the people that like it, and it frustrates me when that happens, but especially being ghosted. And so I use that as fuel. But that would be the only time I'd say like I just didn't get support. And then listen, every now and then I'd be out at networking events, and there'd be random people that have very little context for me and would say stupid shit or put me in a stupid box.
Mm-hmm.
And I would take a deep breath and try to write that off. But rightfully so, like they don't know who the hell I am. But everybody in my inner circle totally has and still supports me, mm-hmm. which I'm super fortunate about, because I'm sure people that are going to read this article or potentially if we clip up this video, they may not come from a family that gets it, supports it, or thinks it's a crazy risk that they're leaving what they studied for 4 years behind. So.
Okay. Yeah, that's great. And so then for like the clients that didn't support you, or like when you were saying at networking events,
yeah.
You maybe question, and you just said you kind of like try to push it away. And do you think that that's kind of the best option, just to be like confident in yourself, and as long as you know what you're doing, to be able to brush it away? Or how do you, more in depth, how do you go about that?
Yeah, with like going to some of these networking events or meeting people, that I think that was an easier hurdle for me to like, it rubbed me the wrong way. Because it's like, again, you don't know who I am and you don't know what I'm doing. You're trying to put me in a box, or you're making fun of what I do. I got over that quicker. And confidence, this is just for me, this is my own head, but like confidence for me sways and comes and goes every day. But the clients or the people I either tried to work with or reach out to me for RFPs, and we try to work together, like in that, if they say, hey, we can't afford it, or we can't do it, or we're not ready, cool, I'm okay with that. It's when like other professionals that are especially even more experienced than me, or have bigger businesses, or you think they have their shit together, and then they just ghost you. Like, I'm sorry, you spend time to do like RFP meetings and like 10, 12 page proposals. And like, I've had colleagues that I worked together at WeWork that like we'd see each other and like they wouldn't talk to me, and I'd be like in an elevator like, hey, like how's it going? Like I'm still rooting for them. But like, so it's common. It's in my opinion, it's just best practice to just never burn your bridges. But yeah, like when I wouldn't hear from that, I'd be like, oh my God, what'd I do wrong? Did I overprice? Did they not like me? Did I say something wrong? Are they like a million? And you can ask my, if you ask my wife this, she'll be like, Kev, just get over it. Easier said than done though.
Yeah.
And that's the thing that I think entrepreneurs, regardless of age, skill set, network, what their product or business is, like you have to be ready for that. Like you're gonna, I say in my General Assembly career classes that I teach is like, get ready to build up your no tolerance. You are going to get told no. People are not going to understand you. People are going to think you're overpriced, or people are not like, get ready to build up your no tolerance. And I say that for people job searching too, especially if they're super picky, not picky, but super targeted where they want to work. Like get ready to be told no.
Mm-hmm. All right. I know we're almost running out of time, but I just have, I guess, a question to wrap everything up.
I definitely have like 5 or 10 more minutes, so I want to make sure we get to the content, unless you have to cut short. So
all good. So then, do you think that everyone has what it takes to be an entrepreneur? Like, who should and shouldn't be an entrepreneur? How can you kind of evaluate yourself to see what it takes?
So again, listen, there's a lot of different ways and a lot of different modalities to get into entrepreneurship. Again, we talked about more of the tech side, the app side, the service-based side, getting cash infusion, not getting cash infusion. There's, I've been following a great up and coming young set of entrepreneurs that just started Rasa here in DC. I don't know if you're familiar with it, but it's basically like a kava for Indian food. And like they're getting backed by backers, but they're the Chipotle Chipotle of Indian food, but like they're doing some really great stuff and I'm rooting for them. But that's one type of entrepreneur. There's a partnership. They're having a brick and mortar restaurant and everything like that. They're getting, investment and things like that, which they need, especially if you're going to lease. So like kudos to them and I'm rooting for them. And then you have other small business owners that are like me, more solopreneur, more 2-3 person shop, more service based. But what I would say is find your entrepreneurship playground. So if it's at school, start that club. Right? Like the biggest thing that any entrepreneur is going to say is like, can you get somebody to say yes and give you money? And that could be a sponsorship, that could be paying for something. That like, so I think that was the biggest thing is being like, wow, I never saw myself as a salesperson, but that, and maybe this will lead into our discussion about the Gallup strengths. Like one of my top 4 strengths with the entrepreneurship report from Gallup is selling. And I just always, I had a bad connotation of selling. I hated sales. I was shy. I didn't think I could do that. But like now that's 50% of my life is trying to do biz dev and sell and convert and get, know how to like anticipate what clients are thinking when they're evaluating a vendor or a speaker, something like that, knowing how to get budgets. So being able to sell and or secure money or sponsorship. So use college, create a side hustle. And if you're creating a side hustle and they want to go work for themselves, I think a lot of people create their side hustle. They're like, oh my God, this is great. I have an extra $500 a month, or I have an extra $1,000 for the next quarter from a thing I did. If they're really serious, they should put that in a closed bank account and never see it again. Not, you know what I mean? Like take that money and just use it for when they do want to go out on their own. I think sometimes people that do side hustles, like take that money and spend it right away. But if they are serious about trying to make this full time, they should save every extra amount of money that they bring in. And a good entrepreneurship friend of mine, Grant from Mission Collaborative, that's exactly what he did. I think he socked away like $20,000-$30,000. And by the time, like within a year, he was ready to go out on his own. He had like $20,000 or $30,000 of a cushion. I don't know how he used it or how he needed it, but I know he was socking money away. Mm-hmm. So, yeah.
Okay, great. And then you did briefly mention like the Gallup assessment. Did you take that like a couple years ago after starting the niche movement and FYN, or did you take it like before and was kind of like evaluating it?
Yeah.
When you're considering? I
took it out of nowhere. Actually, a GW alum, Emily Mossel, who started Lemonade Day at GW, she I don't know if she still works at Gallup, but it was either through her or somebody else was like, or it might have been my friend Ashley that worked at Gallup at the time. Basically, I never knew that there was a entrepreneurship version of the Strengths Quest. And so I took it like probably 2 years into working for myself. And that's when I realized selling was one of my strengths, or at least I developed that. But like looking back at it, and I'm looking at my report right now, is really like, so I would describe myself as a relational leader, and I would describe myself as a relational entrepreneur. So yeah, relationship is number one. It says here, like, have high social awareness. I definitely think I can read a room, read the situation. And it says attract and maintain partnerships. Definitely the word maintaining partnerships. And I think maintaining is one of the things that got me through COVID, not that we're out of it, but got me through the early COVID recession, is maintaining relationships and client connections, even though I wasn't trying to sell them anything. The second one is knowledge. Then there's disruptor. So disruptor is imagine possible futures, brimming with new ideas. So my rule of thumb, especially on the creative side, and it probably bleeds over to our work with the niche movement, is like, I want to try to avoid putting out the same piece of creative content than what we maybe did a year before, a month before. Like, I always want to try to put out something different or something relevant. And then, yeah, the fourth one is selling. So, and the one there with selling is communicate clearly. And I think that's one of the things that one of the skill sets I have that have helped me succeed is I over communicate in every step of the way. So.
Mm-hmm. And do you think, I have it pulled up on my screen too. Do you think that the higher up ones that like you didn't score as great on, do you think that like, I'm trying to look for the right word, like disincentivize you to like keep working, or did you do that like scare you at all? Or did that kind of make sense and you knew that those weren't maybe your highest strengths and already?
So like the strengths like 5 through 10 here.
10, yeah.
Yeah. So to be honest, Maggie, I think it's the first time I've even looking, or at least in the last couple of years, looking at 5 through 10. Um, yeah, I mean, the fact that like risk is 7 out of 10, like I definitely like risk is something that drives me. Um, Delegator 8, yeah, I would say that like even though I have a team, and I know how to delegate kind of creative work, I get a little scared of delegating like um, the financial side of my business or the relationship side of my business. Because like I said on Wednesday, like I think a lot of people want to work with Kevin O'Connell and his team and not the logos of FY and Creative or Niche Movement. Like I doubt people are really invested or could care less about my websites or Instagram handles. Um, so, so yeah, the first time I really even looked at those extra 5 or 6.
Okay, well, that's great. I feel like one of the first things I do is I always look at like what I got like
Oh, so
bad.
you go like instead of looking at the top, like, oh, what are the ones I'm not great at, or like what are my bottom ones?
I do like the top, but I'm like, oh, like what could I improve? And I kind of get bogged down there. But that's just good advice in general to not even like recognize it. So
Yeah, I mean, I think having a quick glance at it, but like I would rather know that like here are my 4 and know that like these are things I should hone in on. So
that's great. Good mindset. Um, let's see what else do I have on here. I guess just like any like wrap up advice,
mhm.
tips. Like I know that there's obviously not a checklist for becoming an entrepreneur, solo entrepreneur, but what should people be looking out for if that's what they do want to be, or eventually like if they're considering it, what should kind of be at the top of their mind? Like I know you said saving money, obviously. What else?
Yeah. So one thing I do want to maybe one last question I want to get into too is the more just a little bit more on the entrepreneurial side because everybody reading this isn't an entrepreneur or going to want to be an entrepreneur. So I just want to
Yeah.
close with that, Maggie. But as far as like a checklist or things that people should be aware of is like, so I would say at every point, people are going to be leaving a full-time job behind. So again, whether it's, hey, I'm 23, I'm graduating college or leaving my MBA program and I'm going to go start this thing. You're pretty much your full-time thing was the comfort of like your tuition being paid and like being in a higher ed institution. If you're like me and you worked for 5, 8, 10, 15, 20, 30, 40 years, you're leaving a traditional 401k, being paid every 2 weeks, benefits, like you're leaving, like that's a huge risk. And I guess the checklist would be like, I did this 5.5 years before my wife and I even started thinking of having a family. So aside from, I mean, we did have a mortgage payment time, but then we moved and we had a rent. So like, aside from having your basic utilities like rent, food, entertainment, all that stuff, like we didn't have to worry about saving up for daycare and doing this. And like, that's the whole new strategy now of like where I want to take my business to provide. So I think where you are in life matters. I think saving up money is important, but like the checklist is, do you have the gut to embrace the no tolerance or the rejection? Do you have the tolerance to be the the last the last person they get paid potentially? So anytime our clients pay our invoices and I have to pay our freelancers or contractors or part-time people, like, and I'm doing it today actually with the one guy, Ethan, for one of our client projects, like I just I just deposit a check and like the whole first half is going right to him because like he's like it's like I'm paying him before I'm even like figuring out what where the rest of that money goes. So so there's that. The sales side of it, I think everything I said would summarize it: is sales, money, and I said something the other day to a colleague of mine is like anticipation. So being able to start to, and that's a super soft skill. There's no book on that, but like being able to, especially if you're in a client service side, like being able to anticipate a client's budget, anticipate their needs, their timeline, their creative subjectivity, um, anticipate the politics of their organization, anticipate their industry, anticipate your own needs, your own team, your own finances. And that's a big one for me, is like that anticipation soft skill.
Mhm.
Yeah, and listen, there's a bunch of books, and maybe that's even something we added there. Like, there's a bunch of books and resources that we could potentially gather, and I would recommend all of them. But until you actually do it, um, and like I can't wait to get like my son when, I mean, he's 9 months, but like just this morning I'm like, oh, we should start like a chocolate chip cookie review channel on YouTube. And I'm just like any way I can expose him to entrepreneurship, whether it's actually bringing in money or not, or like, I don't know. But I think that's an underrated skill set. And I think a lot of thought leaders would agree that entrepreneurship should be more taught in middle school, high school, college, et cetera.
Okay, great. And then I know you want to touch on being intrapreneurial.
Yeah.
So I guess you can say what you
Yeah.
want, or what does that mean to you, and what advice you have for it?
Yeah. So I definitely think if people do, like, if they have that thought that I had when I was in college and all that, of like, oh, I want to go work for myself someday, I definitely think try to get yourself into a company or department or work with a boss that like gives you that creative freedom to start something from scratch. So whether it's an event, a program, a service, start something that did not exist before. And then with that said, like then try to get it self-funded. So again, I'm coming from higher education, but like regardless of like your industry or your education background and how you're applying your degree, like start something new in your department and then figure out how to either get it self-funded or how to bring in money. So for example, I would say my wife, Courtney, is a perfect example of being entrepreneurial. And she always has been. I think she tags herself with being innovative. I think she's truly entrepreneurial. And one of the things that she's done lately, without trying to give too much away, she's in a learning and development role. So like a leadership development role in her organization. And this is a traditional PR firm, but now like she's been able to work with her client service people and their big clients and offer up leadership development contracts, leadership and team dynamic engagements. And so she's actually like helping the company bring in revenue and like good chunks of revenue. So she's sparsing like 10, 15, 20% of her time doing client service work, even though she's not a client service person. So she's entrepreneurial. She's bringing in funding, and that money either self-funds her department or goes back into the company, or thickens the relationship of the client and her company. So so in my opinion, she's a utility. But like those are the type of examples, is like start for something from scratch, bring in money, learn how to like bring a team together. If you don't have a team, especially young people, like there might be no one underneath you. Can you start something that then you recruit a small team for? Trying to think of one other thing, like how to like some other people like thinking be entrepreneurial, like looking for so one of the things I talk about when the recession hit is like right now is I think going to be the decade of the entrepreneurial leader, not the digital leader. Like being a digital leader matters, but I think right now in the next 24 months, you need to be an intrapreneurial or entrepreneurial leader, because budgets are being slashed, coworkers are probably being laid off, if not already. So you got to do more with less, or you got to try to find talent elsewhere or other ways than maybe traditional salaried people. You got to create new services. You have to potentially bring in new revenue streams, bring in new sponsorships, bring it like, again, regardless of the industry, like these are the things that you just need to do. And that's why I would recommend people upping their skill set, is like learn these entrepreneurship skills, test doing stuff. And if you can do that, then maybe you have the gut someday to like go do something on your own.
Mm-hmm. I think that's all I had.
Cool.
You answer everything.